Today I want to talk about a rather unfortunate and contentious topic, and that is how the UK deals with their legislation and enforcing the legislation. They attempt to enforce this legislation worldwide, and in the way they are doing it, this is completely new. So you probably heard about the 4chan case. 4chan is this unfortunate cesspool of garbage. It's run by a company with a different name that is incorporated in the US. And Ofcom, the UK authority, sent them a letter asking for all kinds of information, how they fulfill the requirements of the Online Safety Act from the UK. So that's a law from 2023, which they started to enforce this year. Now, so they are sending out letters to companies in other countries asking them to fulfill the requirements of this UK law. And their justification is that there are some UK users. They don't specify who these users are. They just claim that there is a significant number of UK users without proving that. Now, 4chan fought this. They replied that this is kind of nonsense because this doesn't fall under their jurisdiction. If it's a US company, it falls under US jurisdiction. And that's generally the case. Of course, it's also the question where the servers are located, but in this case, the servers are also in the US. So the countries that count are the country where the servers are located and the country where the company is incorporated. Now, Ofcom replied, no, we are responsible for that and you have to comply with our request. UK law is apparently enforceable everywhere in the world. That's what they think. Now, what's not new about this is, of course, that the law extends beyond the borders of the UK. That's normal. Like if somebody goes into another country, commits a crime and returns, they can be arrested. Likewise here, of course, if they don't comply with the law, they might get into troubles if they go to the UK. But what's new here is that the UK is sending out letters, Ofcom is sending out letters asking for information that would actually break the local law in the country where the company is incorporated. Like if somebody sends me a letter here in Portugal, I would break the GDPR requirements and EU law and Portuguese law if I send them the information. They have to go through the official channels and work together with the authorities of the country where the company is incorporated or the servers are standing. And of course, for something to be enforceable, it needs to be a crime in both countries generally. It's very rarely the case that it's okay for a country to, for instance, extradite someone for something that is not a crime in that country, but a crime in another country. So this is unprecedented, and the question is how to deal with that. Of course, my software is not even running yet, so I shouldn't bother too much about this. But still, I decided to block the UK entirely. I'm using this site here, test locally, to see if the geoblocking works. Enter the site. It tries to load the website. And it works in Germany, in the United States, but not in the UK. So unfortunately, the UK is blocked entirely. And this situation is, of course, very unsatisfactory because, first of all, I would like to have all UK citizens as customers too, if possible. And secondly, it's just unprecedented that a country sends out these letters. And it shouldn't work that way. Normally, a country works together with the local authorities of the country where your servers are or your company is incorporated. And then if it's a crime in both countries, they can become active. But if not, if it's not a crime in your country, then another country cannot just claim they have jurisdiction here. They have to go through the official channels. And if they don't, you break the law. And obviously, it also breaks end-to-end encryption in some cases. And that's the problem with this specific UK law, that they are asking you to break end-to-end encryption, because end-to-end encryption means that only the sender and the receiver can read the message. And if someone else can read the message, it's not end-to-end encrypted. So effectively, the Online Safety Act in the UK also breaks end-to-end encryption, even though they try to claim that's not true and so on. It is absolutely true. That's just by definition the case, because they also ask for information about, say, terrorist activities and whatever. And as you know, in the UK, you're considered a terrorist if you paint a bomber with pink paint. You can be declared a terrorist. Same happens in the US. Declaring anti-fascists at the university a terrorist organization is, of course, batshit crazy. And with these kind of trends, it's even more important to resist these letters, as 4chan did. Now, I want to quickly show you what I'm using to block this, because that's technically the interesting part, right? If you go to the server here, you'll see it's called GeoIP shell. It's just a bunch of shell scripts that then use your local firewall. In my case, IP tables. And let's go to their website. It's on GitHub. You can download it here. And this configures your firewall, NF tables or IP tables, and then downloads the geoblocking information from these hosts and tries to block IP numbers based on the country code you give it. And it works quite well in my tests. It's not perfect, to be honest. For instance, VPNs, when you switch them to, say, London, they might not be blocked for some reason. And the same for some addresses in, say, Russia. If you try to block Russia, they will still work. So it's not perfect, but it's good enough to make clear that the usage in the UK is not allowed and not possible. It's generally going to work. Of course, the situation is very dire, and I hope it can be resolved in a more reasonable manner in the future, because there are 195 countries, and if all of these countries sent out these letters, it would be essentially impossible for anyone to ever conduct business on the internet. So that's not the right way to go. The right way to go is, of course, for Ofcom to send not letters to the individual companies, but to work together with authorities in the respective country, as is usual. And if it's crime in both countries, they can, persecute it. But if not, then they have nothing to say in another country and should focus on enforcing their laws in the UK, because it's a UK law. So that's my take on it. And my apologies to people from the UK who want to figure out what we're doing. It's not going to be possible because you're blocked. So very unfortunate. And that's it for today. Bye.